Day 5. So today's been a pretty normal day, and to be honest I haven't had anything today that I particularly need to talk about. So I'm going to share some of the experience that I had with the acute mental health team, because I think a lot of people, myself included, before I went through that part of the process, have a mindset of, well, what's talking going to do? How's that going to help? And I've spoken to quite a few people who have gone to the first session of something and decided that's not for me, it's not working. My journey with the AMHT must have been 7 or 8 different face-to-face sessions. Even by the end of that process, there's still lots of work to do, but it gives you a much better understanding of where you are. So I'm going to talk through some of my cycles that get me into negative spaces, and hopefully that will bring some logic to people that really can't understand the lack of obvious cause and effect that causes emotional change, and B, for those people who don't necessarily see the value of speaking or asking for help, some insight into how it helped me and how it's helped me to start this journey that I'm on now. So I've struggled with my emotional well-being probably since I was about 14 years old. And so over the last 12 years I've built up different coping mechanisms to try and get me through the darker times, and generally now, 12 years down the line, those mechanisms keep me in a place of either feeling numb or feeling really quite high emotional pain. And I have 5 main cycles that I go on to try and resolve that numbness or that high emotional pain. And that's these 5 things here, which is rumination, detachment, relationships, suicidal thoughts, and distraction. So we'll start with rumination. So when things go wrong or I'm faced with some sort of problem that is making me unhappy, my natural response is to try to fix the problem, which of course the positive to that is it feels like a solution in the short term. But of course not all problems can't be fixed, and if the problem can't be fixed, for me it becomes kind of all-consuming and I can't let go of it, which feeds back into this numbness or high emotional pain because I've got this problem that I feel unable to resolve or fix. And from that, the way of coping with that pain is to try to disconnect from everything and detach, to get away from the problem and the world, to relieve from the emotional pain or the numbness. And it does give that relief from the emotional pain. But the flip side of that is that it's difficult to find reasons to build a future when you are detached from everything, because there's no positives to attach to, which then feeds back into the numbness. And from there, I tend to try to seek positive emotions from relationships, which brings a sense of purpose and also a sense of vulnerability, because I know that ultimately I'm going through these cycles, and having a close relationship with somebody can feel like another person just to let down, or the onset of positive emotions that aren't usually there, because they're not usually there, become quite intense, and they cause illogical behaviour, which makes me then cause damage to the relationship. And of course that relationship, when it breaks down, then feeds back into the high emotional pain, and the way then to try and resolve that is the suicidal thought. So the thought process and the planning of that begins, because it feels like a way out and it feels like relief from this never-ending cycle of stuff that my heart and brain are constantly going through. And of course that then brings on feelings of guilt and disconnection with everything, which ultimately feeds back into the numbness and the high emotional pain again. And from that, the only way that I can try to get out of that cycle is to try and distract myself, which means I'll commit wholeheartedly to something, whether that is work-related or exercise-related or project-related. I will just throw myself wholeheartedly into something so I don't have time to think about anything else, which is a positive because it brings a sense of achievement and it brings a sense of value, and it keeps my mind off the negative thoughts and ruminating and the suicidal thoughts. But of course, ultimately that leads me to become exhausted, and that makes me emotionally vulnerable, so that when the problems do come back in again, I then restart the whole cycle from rumination, but on a lower level than I started the first time, until it digs and digs and digs. And although the awareness of those cycles doesn't necessarily give me relief from them, it does give me a sense of understanding of what is going on and why it's going on, which in itself does bring some solace and some relief. So they're the kind of 5 main things that keep me trapped. Of course, everybody else will have different things that keep them in the world that they're in, whether that is biological or whether that is cycles similar to mine or different to mine. So I hope that offers some light on a little bit of the process of the professional help, as well as a little bit of insight into what goes on up here for those of you that really struggle to piece together, okay, but why? So please share, subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow.